Lazy D here. Today I'm working on this 2012 Polaris Ranger Crew 800. I was out at kind of a local farm event thing and I was networking around and marketing my services. I ended up talking to a dairyman who had this bike, and recently he was using it. They were out feeding some hay and he came back to his shop, parked it, and he was hanging around his shop doing a little bit of cleanup stuff, and he looked out to where he had parked it and it was smoking. And so he grabbed a fire extinguisher and went out there. And by the time he got out there, there was actually flames and he was able to put the fire out. So they disconnected the battery and it had been sitting there for a couple weeks. He wasn't sure where to go with the problem or where even to start trying to fix it and see if it'll run again. So I told him I'd be interested in looking at it and at least give him kind of an assessment. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to fix it or not, but we'll go through it, show you what I find, and just see what we can do. It's kind of an odd one. I popped the seat up here and have the bed up. The problem looks like it started down in here. You can see some burned wires, quite a few. It looks to me like the problem originated from this plug that is from the stator. The stator is underneath this cover here in your engine, and it's a bunch of coiled up wires. And on your flywheel, there's some magnets that spin, and when they spin around those wires, this generates a voltage that then charges your battery and supplies your side-by-side with the electricity it needs to operate. So to me, this is the lowest spot, and it's the most burnt and bare wires. So I'm not sure if this thing had a charging issue or this connection was bad and it got hot and ignited or what, but he did say that the fire started when everything was off. So it could have been just maybe the wires were, shorted to each other. I'm not sure. You would think something like this is fuse protected. So I'm gonna, looking at this, it's kind of hard to tell where to start, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start just cutting back the wiring looms until all the wires that are burned have exposed good wire, and just kind of see how far back the damage went in these wires. Some of these looked like they got hot and maybe shorted, and other ones of these kind of look maybe more like just those early stages of flames that he was able to put out more singed because the insulation is still on them. So I'm going to remove the air box here and some of this ducting to get a little bit more access so I can see what's going on better. I've removed some stuff and I've pulled back as much conduit and wire wrap as I've needed to. I'm getting to the point where I'm probably going to start removing some of these old wires. Before I'm going to do that, I'm going to put these together in bundles so I don't get them confused. So like these three yellows in this black wire are from my stator and probably head all the way up directly to the voltage regulator at the front. So I'm just going to bundle them and use a Sharpie. This is a great tool to have, cheap. Label it stator. And then of these other wires, so I've counted in total, there's 14 wires. So if I separate these out and organize them a little bit, it's going to make this whole process easier for me. So I have 4 right here that 2 are the same color, a purple and a white, and a red and a blue, it looks like, or maybe a red and gray. And these are headed over to my fuel tank. So offhand, I know that these 2, the colored ones, are likely the power and ground to and from the fuel pump. And these 2 black ones are the wires that go to your level sensor. So it shouldn't matter which way these 2 black ones reconnect. But for the sake of being thorough, it wouldn't hurt while they're still connected a little bit to mark them separately. So you could, put a positive on one or a negative on the other, or a star on one side, star on the other side, triangle, X, any number of symbols or numbers you can use for this, but marking them to keep them separate is great. So I'm going to bundle these 4. There's gonna be fuel pump. Just put fuel. And then there's another 5 wires. And then if I follow these down, these go to your, I guess would be your range switch. So this, as you're moving through the gears, this sensor is letting your buggy know what gear you want to be in and displaying that on your dash. So I'm gonna go ahead and bundle all these. All these are different colors, 5 different colors, so that's an easy one. But I'm gonna put, I could just put like transmission on there or something. So now my plan is I'm going to repair all the wires and start fresh and see if I can verify that there's a problem. So I'm going to repair all these temporarily as quick as I can, test for the problem, see if I can identify that I need to order parts or maybe it was just a bad connection. It seems likely that the stator has failed on this thing, but it's hard to know without reconnecting everything and duplicating the concern. I'm looking at this engine side cover, and I just said I can't verify the stator's bad without putting it back together, and then I thought about that after I said it. That's absolutely wrong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this plug off the stator wires, and I'm going to strip these back, and then I'm going to test them. And you're going to want to test, so this is generating 3-phase power, so you're going to want to check between each leg. There's 3 different ways you can check between the 3 legs. And then this is the field wire. I've got my meter here. I'm going to turn it to ohms. So I've looked through the manual, and the resistance between each leg of this generator should be about 0.2 ohms, and they should be pretty consistent with each other. So this one's stabilized at about 0.4, 0.3. Seems about the same, 0.3-ish. So they all seem pretty consistent. That's good. None of these should be shorted to ground either. So open's good. I got it on the case here. You could clip it onto a bolt or something and then just go between each leg here and see if there's a short to the case, which there's not. And then this brown wire is actually a ground also, so I should see continuity here, which we do. So that's what we would expect to see. So it seems to me that this stator, upon testing it here with a meter, is okay. It's a little bit out of range on the resistance between the legs, but resistance is consistent between the legs. So I'm okay, in my opinion, wiring this all back together and testing it. I'll do some other testing before I actually connect everything and start it, just to make sure we're not losing power somewhere. So we'll be safe to try and start it if that works. I've got all my wires reconnected. I'm looking under the rear driver's side seat where the battery is. I'm gonna test a few things before I try and start this thing and check if it's charging correctly. So I'm gonna put my meter down here so you can see it, hopefully. Okay, so I'm testing for DC voltage. And first I'm gonna check the battery to make sure we're even got enough charge to start. 12.4 volts. That's pretty acceptable. That looks pretty good to me. So now I'm going to switch over to my amperage setting, and then I got to actually move a plug so this amperage will now be fused. So if there's an over amperage, it'll pop the fuse instead of blow up my meter. So I got to move my connectors around. So now when I test, this has to be in series. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip onto this positive battery terminal with one. I'm going to set that aside and out of the way. And then I'm going to hold on this positive terminal with the other end of the meter. Now, this is measuring the amount of amps that are flowing through the meter and then through the wire. So I don't have any reason to expect right now. We see 0.001 amps. It's very low, 1 milliamp. So I know that amperage is not leaving this battery and creating heat somewhere else. So at this point, I'm not worried about another fire happening. I'm gonna go ahead and connect everything and try to start this thing and see if everything works still. I've got my wires all reconnected, my battery connected. I've tested for amperage leaving that would be going to a short, and we don't have any of that, so I should be safe to start. I got the camera rolling on the wires in case I start this thing up and it starts a fire. You'll get to see it. So we could see it was charging at about 14 volts. Everything looks pretty normal to me. So at this point, I would suspect the root cause of our problem was a bad connection that got hot. The rancher did say that he had washed everything really good before he brought it to me. I can still see it's a little dirty. He did a pretty good job, but I suspect that connector could have had water getting in it or hay all over it or something to where if it did get hot, it could have started a fire pretty easily. So I'm gonna put this all back together and we'll go from there. So I'm happy this thing's running and charging. Doesn't look like we have any more electrical problems. I'm not gonna leave all these wires like this. So I'm gonna go back through, I'm gonna probably cut out some of these sections and definitely heat shrink everything. And then the wires going to the stator, I'm gonna buy a 4-prong weatherproof connector and install that here. So I'll need to get the wire sizes. Some of the wires I put in are a little big or a little small. So I'm gonna get some more appropriate sized wire before I put this all back together and wrap it all up. In addition, I'm gonna show you some other damage that I saw here. So in the fire, this is the air box I took out. There's some melting that's happened on this intake boot. So this is gonna have to be replaced. It's only a matter of time before this has a whole break in it. Here's another intake boot that's pretty well charred. So I'm gonna put a list together of parts and order everything and get this all fixed and go from there. Just finished up with the test drive. The bike works great. I would say if you're going to do a repair like this on electrical and you had a fire, really make sure when you're done your charging system's charging normally. You don't have any draw when the key is off to make sure you're not going to have a problem in the future. If you like this content, please comment, like, or subscribe. Thank you.